Alright, so the following video will cover the sequence in P2 for DSR, specifically for Strength of the Ward. We're going to review two POVs, one from a normal uh, camera POV as well as a wider shot to have a good visual of mechanics as they unfold for Strength of the Ward. I'm going to segment the videos out for P2 into dedicated sections. So this specific segment of the video will only cover Strength of the Ward and dashes for Sanctity. And subsequent videos for P2 will cover the Meteor Tower sequence in its entirety, just to keep the flow and the videos segmented very clearly and to keep the amount of information and tracking that needs to happen during these phases to a minimum, because oftentimes there is a lot of information to parse out, as well as filter out, as we are presented with a scenario and we need to quickly identify how to resolve mechanics related to P2 and then also subsequent phases. And I'm going to go ahead and let the VOD play out. We're currently looking at the normal POV for DSR P2 specifically. Right off the bat, as part of the pre-read setup, we will determine and identify Group 1 and Group 2 with their respective like parties made of a tank, healer, a melee class, whether it's fake melee, it doesn't matter, and a range class, whether it's caster or range. And what's important to know, at least with the way the markers are set up, is Group 1 will be split such that they're going to cover the number side, which is the section I'm highlighting, and Group 2 is going to cover the letter side, which is I'm highlighting with the yellow marker. So that's the first thing that you do in all of this for Strength of the Ward is just make sure if you're Group 1, you're biasing your movement so that you end up on the number side. Group 2, you're biasing your movement so that you end up on the letter side. You don't want to be in a situation where when you mix up your positioning and you're taking over somebody else's spot on in the respective side of the group. So that's the very first thing. Just have a mental note of tracking and whatnot. But we're gonna let this VOD play. I'm gonna pause it at different points just to highlight specific things with the sequence. From the very start, with the tanks, what you kind of want to do is it's okay to let Thordan walk out of his starting position. And it's actually ideal for him to walk out of his starting position. So if you want to do a ranged attack or whatever, here's his hitbox. You kind of actually want to position him so he moves a little off center. Because later on, what he tends to do when he's casting to start a specific trio sequence, a specific set of mechanics like Strength of the Ward or Sanctity of the Ward, he'll jump back center. So just having him off center a little south, he'll continue to face the same direction. If you attempt to keep him perfectly center, he might randomly jump and he'll face some random other direction depending on where he decides he wants to land. And it's just for your melees. It's not super vital, but it is very, very nice. So right out the get-go, Thordan's gonna do 2 autos on the main threat. That's auto number 2, and he starts casting Ascalon's Mercy Concealed. This is a Protean bait that everyone is going to bait, so from the get-go, we're all going to be nice and tight right behind Thordan. At the end of the cast bar, that is when the snapshot happens. So the Gunbreaker was positioned here, and then you see them move to the side at the end of the cast bar. The party stack is positioned here, so at the end of the cast bar, Thordan is going to snapshot the cleaves for his Proteans. So as we'll see right now, boom, nice and tight. You want to avoid scenarios where like you're reading the cast bar, you're freaking out, you don't know what the timing is. If you move before this cast bar finishes, I guarantee you increase the risk of killing your party, because you're gonna bait a Protean in the direction that you're pre-positioning, and then that may be enough to kill people along the way. So once again, just to stress this really, really hard, because this is going to be the case with the other Protean bait we're going to handle going into Strength of the Ward. As soon as that cast bar's done, move. Do not move prior, unless you're in Brazil, and you know the snapshot timings. And then another note too is like, so here's like an approximation of Thordan's cast bar, and as you saw with the Protean baits, boom, Protean baits are out. It's a cone, right? So if you want to make the most of optimizing your movement so that you're not moving around so much, you know, just in terms of shapes and all that nonsense. The closer you are to Thordan, the center of Thordan's hitbox, the less movement you have to do overall. So like Thordan's, so somebody can be here and then they just need to scooch a little bit to the side, and then they completely dodge the Protean. This is really nice for the casters. You do have to get pretty far into his hitbox just to make sure you minimize the movement. It's something minor, but it comes in handy too, because if you're pre-casting something, it's gonna work wonders. So Thordan does his 2 autos, Protean bait, and then he follows up with 3 cleaving, like 3 swipes on the main threat. So it's 1, it's 2, it's 3, then he recenters. And it's at this point that we start making preparations for Strength of the Ward, because he's going to stop doing autos. He's going to do a long cast for Strength of the Ward. And you'll notice from my POV here that I start pre-positioning myself so that I wedge myself between the yellow and the blue marker of my respective side for my grouping. So in this POV, I am group 1 healer. That means I have to make sure I end up on the number side. I have to make sure that I position accordingly, as you'll see here. And I'm just slowly backing up. The main reason I'm backing up as Thordan starts casting Strength of the Ward is so that I have a very good vantage point of the entire map, as you can see here. Like, it is very easy for me to assess what's about to happen and quickly determine where my positioning is going to have to be. So at the end of the Strength of the Ward cast, there is some RP on the field. You can ignore it. That's not really important information with the knights appearing. Everyone jumps away. And now the sequence begins. So right off the bat with Strength of the Ward, we have 3 Dragoons at the outskirts of the map. So we have a Dragoon here on the blue marker. We have a Dragoon here on a yellow marker. We have a Dragoon here on the purple marker. The reason why I'm emphasizing the color of the marker as opposed to saying Dragoon on Charlie Bravo 4 is because to determine the safe spot with the Dragoons that are ultimately going to do a dash, the Dragoons are going to cut through the color marker that they're selecting. As you can see here from my vantage point, I can quickly see, okay, blue, yellow, purple, not safe. Red is the only safe. Red is the only section that does not have a Dragoon on it. Therefore, it's red. That's how I make that determination. So what I'm going to do here is, once I've assessed, okay, red is the safe spot, as I'm highlighting here and circling in yellow, what I'm going to do on my end right here as I'm circling my character is I'm just gonna mosey on over here and get into position to prepare for Lightning Storm. Lightning Storm is the spreads that we do for Straight for the Ward, and they later come back in P5 for during uh the P5 trio sequence. So once again, what I look at from the get-go is, all right, where are the Dragoons? Dragoons on blue, yellow, purple. Therefore, red is safe. That's how I make that determination. And so we'll let the plot play out. So okay, cool. Red is safe. Now you need to look at the toolbox to see what this setup is going to be. But for the purposes of Strength of the Ward, the configuration is usually we have the tank, the healer, the melee, and off here behind my enmity table, we have the range. That's usually the setup. It's not too complicated. What's also helpful to know is for our melee and range, your healer is going to take the big fidget spinner and use that as a positioning tool, so that they're in the right spot. And for you as a melee, as a range, you're going to count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 crystals from the larger fidget spinner that the healer is sitting on to determine, where you're going to stay, as we can see here with the ninja that I'm highlighting to the left of my character. That's how you determine that safe spot. For the tanks, what you can do is you can use this kind of like rod, these blue rods. The rods are not exactly placed so that you can stand on them so that you're safe, but they're ever so in enough the map that you can use them to kind of guide your positioning on where you're standing. As you can see where the gunbreaker is relative to the blue rod, as long as you're directly across your healer and then ever so slightly in the vicinity of that blue rod, you're going to be in just the right position to avoid getting cleaved by the 3 dragoons that are about to dash across the screen, as we can see here, and they'll move on through. So that's how we make that determination. So I'm going to let the bot play out a little more. So we're in spreads for Lightning Storm. The dragoons are going to dash across the map. And then there's one more element at play, but honestly, with enough practice, the following element isn't really important. It just becomes a thing of practice where you kind of learn to ignore it after a while, and that's the earthquake. So I'm actually going to slow this down ever so slightly. Here we go, to half speed. The dragoons are dashing. At the same time that lightning storm goes off, there is an animation that plays of the warrior, as we can see right here in front of us. He's going to do his thing. He's going to do his earthquake, which summons the earthquakes right here that we're going to have to dodge in. So for this specific grouping right here, where my POV is from, this earthquake's actually going to step very close. But when you run into a situation where the earthquake's like right in front of your face, what you can do to kind of help you parse this out is, if the earthquake is going to be close to you, let's just say like the earthquake's going to be like right here where I'm circling in this POV. If you're a melee, a range, a healer, you can just chill on this golden ring. This golden ring that lines the perimeter of the map that I'm highlighting right now. As long as you're sitting on this golden ring, it doesn't matter how close that earthquake is, because when that earthquake steps closer to you and it's like right here where I'm drawing on the visual, by the time it does that, then you can like just safely move into it without a care in the world. It's intimidating at first while you're kind of learning the timings, but trust me, with practice, you kind of learn to ignore it because it's just like whatever. It doesn't exist because it's not going to be an issue for you. moving in. But once again, for range, healer, melee, if it's in the case of like an earthquake that's like right in front of us and it's about to step, as long as you're on this golden ring, you're gonna be okay. You just move in. For the tank, however, if the earthquake is like right in front of the tank, the instant we flash for thunderstorm, from being in our respective positions, then as a tank with the earthquake right in front of your face, the instant we all flash, you just hold W. You hold W, you move in. You're going to move into the first step of the earthquake immediately. And then, the next step is going to happen. Do not hesitate, because if you do hesitate, you're as good as dead. You don't have an option. But it's also very easy, like once you understand the timings and the snapshots. So going back to um, the normal POV, as you can see in this scenario, our gunbreaker does have to deal with the earthquake right in front of them, as I'm highlighting here. But it doesn't matter, because as soon as we all flash for lightning storm, this gunbreaker is just gonna step into the earthquake immediately, and they'll be okay because the earthquake would have snapshot already. So I'm gonna let this play, and then we'll see. As soon as we flash, pay attention to the gunbreaker. The gunbreaker's already moving in, and they dodge, and then we're moving in, and we're safe. So I'm gonna replay that yet again. So as soon as we flash, the gunbreaker's gonna move in, and then we're just on the golden ring waiting for that to move in on us, and we're good. That's all there is to it for the earthquake dodge. It's really a non-issue. The bigger issue ends up being, can people count to 5? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 to help them position and not kill each other for the lightning storm spreads, as we'll see right here. And you even see like the ninja kind of backs up a little bit just to make double make sure that there won't be a risk of killing the healer, which is me in this POV. So once again, just dodge the earthquake. Don't be intimidated by it. It's not too bad. With practice, it'll become second nature. We resolve lightning storm, we resolve earthquake, and so what the group needs to do now is, the tank is holding W, moving towards Thordan. Typically, the DPS will converge onto the healer so that the three of us can move single file in the same direction as the gunbreaker, moving towards Thordan over here as I'm circling. You want to do that because as we're moving into position, and we're dodging our earthquake, what's happening is Thordan starts casting another Protean bait. And you can see that here on the enmity table. Super duper important. So, as we saw at the very beginning of the fight, after Thordan does his 2 autos, and then he does a cast for Ascalon's Mercy Concealed, or whatever you want to call it, he does it again here. He's untargetable, obviously. Once again, what you're waiting for is for this cast bar to finish, and then you dodge. And in order to make everyone's life easy, we're all going single file straight to Thordan. There's no deviations. There's no people like splitting off prematurely, because if you split off prematurely, you are almost guaranteed to kill somebody in your light party. Everyone has to go single file straight to Thordan. You're waiting for this cast bar that I'm circling. You're waiting for this cast bar to complete, and only when this cast bar is complete, you dodge. And I'm really stressing this because in early prog for Strength of the Ward, this is actually one of the choke points. Is like, do people have the ability to go in a straight line, and do people have the ability to read the cast bar of an enemy to make sure they understand the snapshot so that they can safely dodge and not kill each other? That's what needs to happen here. So I'm gonna let this play. We're all moving single file to Thordan. The earthquakes are a non-issue. Bam. The snapshot has completed. And as you can see, once again, I am stressing this a lot. Notice how we're all in a straight line here. And notice on the opposite side, they're also in a straight line. And they're all converging onto Thordan here. So now that this snapshot is completed, then what's going to happen is, we're going to bait the Proteans and they're going to be nice and tidy. And as we saw at the beginning of the fight, it's going to be a cone. And then this is why, like, I recommend for dodging Protean baits, just try to get as close to Thordan as possible. Like, get your body into his hitbox, even though we can't target him. Because if you can do that, as I'm circling here in yellow, in blue, then it makes your life easier to just dodge the Protean with minimal movement, and you can do your thing. So here we go. Protean has been baited. We move ever so slightly. And even notice my movement. So this is my POV. I barely move at all because I have a very good idea of how fat those cones are from the Protean baits. So I also have a very good idea of how much movement is necessary. My body is currently right here, and I was right here. So I just barely moved. And as a caster, this is very helpful because what I on Pure Healer, what I end up doing is as soon as we dodge the Protean, I'm pre-casting a Medica 2. And then here we go. This is where reading the mitigation schedule is also going to be very important. Once we dodge the Protean baits, people get their assignments. And there's a lot going on. The tanks have to identify the Paladin on the map, which is here and here, where I'm currently circling. And ultimately, what's going to happen is these Paladin, assuming everyone's alive, these Paladin are going to pick a random person that does not currently have a defamation symbolized by this blue circle. These Paladin are going to target somebody that does not have defamation, and they're going to they're going to spawn a tether on these people. So I'm just going to pretend it's going to be the ninja and the red mage in this example that I'm drawing. And so what's going to have to happen is, here we have one of the tanks, the Gunbreaker, and then the Dark Knights over here. What's going to have to happen is the tanks are going to have to pre-communicate ahead of time how they're going to pick up the tethers and basically intercept these tethers. So doesn't matter what system they decide to use, but these tanks have to pick up the tethers. Now that's the tank stuff that needs to happen mechanically. The defamations are going to have very specific positioning where they're going to have to go and take these defamations away from the group, because obviously if the defamations overlap or clip the group, people are surely going to die. So these defamations have to very quickly orient themselves on the map and move accordingly to avoid killing people. I'm going to go into that later in the video just because there's a calculation that I use that helps me quickly orient and solve the entire mechanic in a split second. But that's mechanically what has to happen with defamation. For everyone else who is not a tank, who is not a defamation, that has no assignment. So here we have the red mage, here we have the ninja, and I believe the scholar. The scholar's somewhere over here behind Thordan. I can't quite see them. The Reaper as well. The remaining players that were not assigned defamation, and it'll be 3 people. Can't quite make it out due to all the madness that's going on in the field. But the remaining players that do not have defamation are ultimately going to need to identify where Thordan is, because Thordan is going to jump away. He's going to appear at a specific point in the map, and the unmarked players are going to have to resolve a stack, so they're going to have to end up with Thordan, stack up nice and tight under Thordan and resolve the stack. That's what they have to do. So it's a lot to parse, it's a lot to track, but with practice and exposure, you know, you get used to doing this. So before I even go into solving each respective section of the mechanic, this is what I do on my POV to kind of help me out and parse and basically solve strength of the word in a fraction of the time that it's necessary. So around the time that, you know, we're in our positions, earthquake's going off, all this junk is happening, what I'm paying attention for right now in this very moment is the positioning of the paladin. So you'll notice that there's a knight who jumped here. There's another knight who jumped here. I immediately know that they're the paladin because they have a very specific way of landing on the map, such that them landing on the map will instantly solve the mechanic, the rest of strength of the ward for me. So that's I already know what to do from here on out, regardless of what assignment I get. I see that the paladin are on the map, and I kind of use this circle right here, you know, where Thordan is standing on, to help orient myself relative to these two paladin that spawn, because in positioning and identifying and tracking all the RP on the field, what is a truth to strength of the ward is the paladin will spawn such that they will spawn biasing far from Thordan. What does that mean? Is knowing that the paladin are here on this side of the circle, right? On this chunk right here that I'm currently drawing on. That means that they're gonna spawn and they're spawning in such a way that they're biasing away from Thordan. Therefore, Thordan is gonna spawn approximately, let's see, Thordan will spawn approximately here, where I'm drawing a circle at the outskirts of the map. And in doing so, it forms a triangle. So that's how I solve strength of the ward. Depending on where these paladins spawn, they will spawn biasing far away from Thordan such that Thordan will be opposite to them. And then another truth in strength of the ward is if I know that Thordan spawns far away from the point of the paladin spawning, therefore I know where the positioning of the warrior that is going to spawn at the outskirts of the map opposite to Thordan. So that's a lot of words. What does that mean? I'll try to simplify it. So looking at this POV, if the nut, so I'm gonna highlight this circle right here, and then I'll just say this. If the paladins spawn, we'll do a very easy example. If the paladins spawn such that they spawn here and here, a truth is Thordan will spawn here. This is very easy with this POV, because once again, Thordan spawns far away from the paladins, forming a triangle. Now, let's try another example. If the paladins spawn here and here, then that means Thordan is going to spawn, you know, like across from here, right over here. So by using the paladin, it very quickly helps anchor me for the rest of strength of the ward, and I don't have to think about anything else. I just need to know, okay, where are the paladin? And then I instantly know where everything else is on the map. We'll do one more example. If the paladin spawn, let's just say, like here, and then over here, then that means Thordan is going to be like over here. he's going to spawn biasing away from the paladin. This doesn't make a whole lot of sense right now, but I promise with practice and time, as you try to get your bearings, understanding where to take your assignment and, not mess it up and get everyone killed, it will make sense. Because let's just run the easy example from this POV. If the paladins spawn here and here, then that means Thordan will spawn here. Therefore, what this means is the party stack is going to have to resolve here. And the Defamations are going to have to take their Defamation assignment here, back over here, and then over here. That's how I read the map for Strength of the Ward, is I very quickly identify where are the Paladin, and I do it the instant we see the first step of the Earthquake. It's like, the moment this flashes by, bam, I already know, like, okay, these guys are right here. Paladin, I know Thordan's over here. And I know the warrior's over here. The warrior, Thordan, I know that's a paladin. I know that's a paladin. Cool. And how do I make this assessment? Very simple. There is a huge benefit to doing really good camera work so that the camera orients you and helps you quickly anchor to a specific relative positioning. So we do our spreads, we move into position. I already have a very good idea where these paladin are, therefore I know where Thordan. And notice right here, I start tilting my camera. I tilt my camera such that the paladin are very easy to anchor me. Like, here's a paladin, here's a paladin. Ideally, I set it up so that I set up my camera so my POV has like, okay, paladin here, okay. I'm staring at them from this POV. I don't even have to look behind me, because by having the paladin to my left and to my right, relative to my viewpoint, I already know Thordan's behind me. I don't even have to look for Thordan. I just instantly know, because Thordan spawns biasing away from the paladin. I don't have to look for anything. All I need to do is put the paladins on my left and my right view, relative to my POV, and then I'm set. Like, I know exactly where to go from here on out. So that's what I do to solve Strength of the Ward. As you can see here, I'm moving the paladins so that from my POV left and right. Also notice here, you will have to train yourself so that you don't get psyched out. There is a random warrior that spawns. He's not important. He's just there to chill. He will confuse you, because if you don't know how to quickly identify the paladin and discern them from the warrior, this warrior's casting puddles. That's what's going on. That's why he's here. Don't get confused by him. You only care about the paladin. So by understanding where the paladin are, and therefore by understanding where the paladin are, you know exactly where Thordan's gonna be. And I know from my POV, like, okay, paladin here, they make a cute little line. Therefore, they're biasing far away. I know Thordan's over here. I don't even have to look. I know he's over here. And I know there's a warrior over here, because the warrior spawns opposite to Thordan. Then I've already solved the mechanic, because using this information, I'm just going to draw this a little neater so it's a easier visual. The next step is, in this instance, I am Defamation. So what we need to do as Defamation is, we need to take our Defamation. Sorry, here we go. We need to take our Defamations, and we need to take them through the paladin, and then kind of use our body language to kind of telegraph, hey, I'm on the left side, and hey, my body's on the right side. You want to go through what a lot of us like to call the door that the paladin form, in order to have the Defamations very clearly telegraph to each other, okay, this guy who's kind of on the left is going to go on the left. This guy who's in the center is probably going to go in the center. this guy who's on the right is probably going to go on the right. And I really encourage doing this kind of movement, even though it is more movement, just because by physically telegraphing this movement and moving, you avoid two problems. You avoid a scenario where it's like, okay, let's look at the person with the middle defamation, and let's look at the person right here at the bottom of the POV where I'm circling. Let's pretend this dude right here at the bottom like beelines it to the relative east positioning and puts their defamation right here. And let's say this person, myself, I'm not paying attention. Maybe I had to arrest somebody. Maybe I'm off guard. I'm like, okay, I see this person wants to take the middle one. All right, cool. This person's gonna plant right here. All right, then I'll just go to the right. Guess what? Because this asshole was in my blind spot, we're both fucked. We're all fucked. I didn't see him because he was in my blind spot. He just bolted his ass over there, and now I can't see shit because he didn't go through the door. And because he didn't go through the door, by the time I realized, uh-oh, he's in the spot I want, I'm probably gonna have to bully this poor guy, and hopefully this poor guy is smart enough to like kind of bolt over here. You see it all the time in PF. Do not beeline. You're gonna fuck over the people that are trying to read the situation. Excuse my language. It's just a very simple a very simple mistake that fucks over people very quickly. Just use the goddamn door. This is all I can say. As long as you use the door, you make it very easy to identify people's body language and intention for taking their defamation. So that it solves that problem. The second problem this sort of movement solves is understandably, when we're progging, strength of the ward is a wall for a lot of folks. They get stuck because they get disoriented. They're panicking. They don't know what to do. They don't know what they're doing. They don't even know where they're supposed to go, despite having looked at the toolbox. So, by going through the door, it also mitigates the issue of like tether terrorism, where a defamation will like, as they're panicking and moving around, they'll intercept a tether meant for the tank, and they'll make the tank very unhappy because a few things will happen. Either everyone dies or the tank's gonna die. I'm most assuredly someone is going to die because if the defamation doesn't use the door and beelines it, but they take too long to beeline, they are most certainly going to steal a tether and get people killed in the process. So that's my 2 cents on why it's important to identify where the paladin are, and then as the defamation, your job is to use your body language and telegraph to your fellow defamation players, what your intention is. So you make sure you reduce the odds of confusing each other, and then you also reduce the odds of stealing the tether from your fellow tanks who do have an annoying job of moving into position. I'm going to let this POV play, and then I'm going to jump back just because in this POV I did get a defamation. So taking it from the top, once again, identify the paladin. Cool. I now know where Thordan is. I'm going to tilt my camera in such a way that the paladin are to my left and my right. I'm just waiting for the assignments to go out. Cool, I'm defamation. Time to go through the door. Where the fuck is that other defamation going? So I start flipping my camera. See, there you go. The fucking defamation guy who was in the blind spot on the relative southeast decided to cut to the relative west. This is exactly why I say we gotta use the goddamn door, because this fucker could have killed us if the scholar and I weren't paying attention. But as you can see here, the two of us have eyes, and we have eyes on this fucking machinist, and so the scholar and myself are like, okay, this guy like fucked us, but whatever. We're just gonna go in position, and that's how you solve defamation, for the most part. Now, the positioning also matters for defamation because here's the situation. The tanks are going to have to pick up their tether. And the tanks are gonna end up in a spot over here where I'm circling. Thordan's right here. Thordan's right here, and the paladins are here. We don't give a shit about the warrior. We don't give a shit about that warrior. But this is the setup. What needs to happen with Defamations is, as you're practicing, you can use the fidget spinner that's at your respective part when you're planting the relative east and west defamation relative to Thordan's positioning. So let's treat Thordan as new north, and then let's treat this as relative west, relative east to Thordan. You can use the fidget spinner for guidance, but you cannot take the defamation onto the fidget spinner. What you need to do is you need to bias away from Thordan. Looking at Thordan right here where I'm circling, Thordan is relative north. You need to bias your defamation about 2 crystals away from Thordan relative to your fidget spinner. Because if you take this defamation and you put it right on the fidget spinner, you put it right on the marker, I guarantee you're gonna kill the tank that's on your respective side, because the size of the defamations are ever so big enough to be in range of killing the tanks. You have to bias away from Thordan, and we'll know you'll kill them, because we'll know that if like the tanks are doing their stuff correctly, they're gonna die to defamation damage. The person that takes the middle defamation spot, they can plan on the fidget spinner. They just need to make sure they're on the golden ring. They're at the wall right here, and then that's all there is to it for defamation. So once again, gonna hop a little bit back in the POV. Please, for the love of God, when you're orienting your camera, use the door, go through the 2 paladin away from Thordan towards the warrior at the outskirt right here. Do not be this machinist who's like, I'm gonna go in the blind spot and fuck over the 2 defamation. Like, you can clearly see that the scholar and I are confused, because the scholar realized sooner than I did that the machinist was gonna take the west wing when I was expecting the scholar to take the west wing. And so the scholar and I are negotiating, trying to figure out like, oh, okay, the scholar did me a solid and overcorrected for me, so I didn't need to take that east wing while the machinist messed us over, and the defamations are in position. Now for the tanks, I do have a tip for tanks. Hopefully a helpful one at that. So let's pretend a scenario where Paladin here, Thordan is going to be here, knowing that the 2 Paladin are right here, right? Now, let's pretend the defamation are not trolling. Let's pretend the defamation are in their correct spots. Right here, right here, right here as I'm trying. Now, what's really cool about the way Strength of the Ward is set up and the tether mechanic, yes, the tether mechanic's a pain in the ass, assuming everyone's positioning correctly. Once we all get enough practice in positioning, and once people that do not have the marker for defamation, get their bearings on very well so that they're immediately on Thordan. As a tank, at the very beginning when you're progging, you're probably going to be hugging those paladin. Like, you're probably going to be brushing up against them, saying hi, hanging out, hoping to God that like the tether snaps onto you so you can. What you need to do is you need a beeline and make an X form to stretch that tether out, just to also reduce the amount of overall damage that you're going to take. That's what needs to happen. But with practice, and as people get more comfy, you'll find that you no longer have to be in front of the paladin. In fact, you can actually be like over here, like even closer to the party stack that's going to end up here. Because once again, the rule for Strength of the Ward, specifically for the tank tethers, the tethers will target the non-defamation people. And knowing that information, you can just like chill here, much farther away from the paladin. The tether will spawn, and then like your body's already in the path, so it'll snap onto you. And you have a much shorter distance to travel that will allow for more correction and more comfort in making it to your final positioning as a tank to make sure you don't die. Because unfortunately, the reality is people are going to snap your tethers out of your hands, and then you're going to panic, or they're going to panic, or whatever. The tether, it's done. Like, you're as good as dead. In many cases, unfortunately, and that's not your fault. But knowing this piece of information is very helpful, just so that you have more time to work with as you pop sprint, pop your mitigations, and get into positioning for the tethers. I don't have an immediate POV of this. Maybe I do. Let me see. Let's see, tank. Oh, I do. All right, cool. So in this POV, I'm a tank. I'm dodging my earthquake. Once again, paladin here, paladin here. Thordan's gonna be over here. I know he's right here on the screen, but that's how I already did the calculation. Like, I already know Thordan's gonna be right there. So that's the assessment I made. I'm on tank. I pop my party mitt. I am G2. So as G2, I'm like, okay, bang. And you notice that I'm floating. I'm floating in front of my respective paladin, like actually over here. So I'm not even in front of him. Because I know, oh, okay, tether, bam, snap, grab. And I have a million years to position. And you notice how quickly I was in position, and we're looking at Alexandria, who is my co-tank in this Alexandria in this scenario. Notice how quickly I got into my final position, and notice how quickly Alexandria got into position. One snap, move, bam. Took them 50 years to get in position. It's not saying they're bad, but I was able to get there faster. So, dodge the earthquake, orient yourself. I am G2 tank. I'm taking G2 paladin. I am floating because I am confident in the group. Grab my tether, move into position. Easy peasy, done. And then I take my tank buster. So that's the piece of advice I have for the tanks. As everyone gets more and more comfortable, and you want to buy yourself more and more time so that you're comfortable with positioning for your respective component of strength of the ward. Now back to my respective POV on White Mage. I'm a Defamation. I'm moving into position. All this madness is going on. So as everyone is getting blasted, Defamations are going off, party stack is going off, tank busters are going on. The tanks are going to be incapacitated. They're going to be stunned for a little while. The party stack that's underneath Thordan here on the opposite side of my POV, because I'm a Defamation. These folks are gonna splinter off to take 3 towers. Easy. Just sit in those towers. You wait for conviction to fly by. The Defamation people are also going to take their respective towers on their respective sides. So here we go. We have the Scholar, we have the Machinist, we have myself. I'm going to move forward to take my respective tower. It's easy. You just go on the tower. Sit there. And I swear to God, sit there. You need to wait for conviction to fly by. Because if you move before conviction flies by, you would have killed us all. Conviction is the snapshot for the tower resolving, and I'm spending time talking about this because I can't tell you how many times during this sequence, and then later in Meteor sequence, and then even in P3, people move prematurely out of the towers before they see conviction or whatever, whatever tower name resolves, and we're all dead. So that's what you need to wait for. And then Tank Busters. Thordan starts casting Ancient Quagga. It's just a raid wipe. We just need like 2 to 3 tools on it. Review the mitigation plan. I'll go over mitigation specifics when we're in session. I just care more about, outlining what's happening. Considering the length of this video, I am going to cut it right here for Strength of the Ward because I spent a significant amount of time talking about this mechanic, just because there's a lot to parse and a lot to identify. But once again, once you identify the key pieces of information that are relevant, whether you're Defamation or you're an unmarked player or you're a tank, then you can very quickly identify what you need to do. And, yet again, entertaining a scenario where paladin here, therefore the Thordan's going to be here. The last component of Strength of the Ward that I'll discuss for this specific segment of video is party stack. So what's going to happen is the Defamations, they're going to hopefully take the door, move into position so that they end up at the appropriate position to take their Defamations on the relative east, west, and south relative to Thordan. Again, remember biasing away from Thordan. Do not take it to the fidget spinner, or you kill the tanks. So that's what's going on with the Defamations. For the unmarked players, the 3 unmarked players, you still wanna. I still recommend, and you get into the practice of orienting yourself relative to having the paladins to your left and right, so you instantly know where Thordan's going to be. That way, as you're making your way to the party stack, that's going to have to be resolved right underneath Thordan. You have time to position such that you're using your body language, so that there's a person here, there's a person here, there's a person here. You're using your body language to kind of non-verbally tell people, hey, I'm on the left side. So when we take the party stack and we split off, because I'm on the left side, I'm taking the left tower. And then this middle person is telegraphing, I'm going to take the middle tower. And this person right here to the right is saying, with their body, I'm taking the right tower. You kind of want to splinter off. Sometimes people hop around, because while VC, you can also use comms, but in PF, what you'll see is people just use their body language to telegraph their intention for the towers. So it is important that you pay attention to where your 2 other buddies, if you're resolving the stack as a non-marked player, are positioning. And also very, 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 very important is, so, the unmarked players, as they're making their way to the Thordan stack, do not spend too much time like kind of meandering away, not being in a tight stack, because remember, these poor tanks have to carry this tether, stretch it out, run it across the room, and position such that, and this is these marks that I'm drawing are not precise. It's probably even tighter than this. The tanks have to position it so that they don't die to the puddles that are spawning. They don't die to defamations that are being baited. You're gonna be packed in like sardines. So if you, as an unmarked player who's not a tank, are kind of meandering, kind of all over the place, you're gonna get clipped by the tanks or you're gonna die. And because you die, you're gonna get the other 2 people in the party stack killed. So you need to very quickly telegraph to each other as unmarked players, like, okay, I want to end up on the right, on the left, right, and middle tower, just based on your body language. And once you all very quickly telegraph, then you get in very nice and tight underneath Thordan. And as soon as you take damage, as soon as the map explodes, then you move into position to take your tower. And then that's all there is to it. It's not too difficult. The tanks are just gonna chill. They're gonna get wailed on, we're all gonna be nice and tight. And as you saw in the POV that I shared earlier, from the tank POV, so please excuse me. Here we go. So starting from the spreads and stuff, I'll point out how tight this is. So I'm the G2 tank taking the G2 paladin relative to Thordan. I'm floating. I grab the tether. I'm in position. Look how tight that is. Once again, there's not a lot of room. There's not a lot of play. So looking at this, here's the party stack nice and tight. Here's a tank. Here's another tank. This party stack resolves. It's a pretty big radius. And then this tank buster's just gonna go ham wild and wail on the poor tanks. And bam. And you even see it from my POV too, and I'm gonna do my best to freeze frame this. From the tank POV, the positioning is very tight because here is the radius of the party stack. Here is the radius of the defamation. Here's my body as a tank. So it's very tight. That's why it's so important that you as the party stack, you get on that fidget spinner, you get right underneath Thordan to avoid dying to getting cleaved by the tank, and to avoid killing the tank by overlapping the party stack onto them while they're getting wailed on by the knights that spawn right here. It's a lot of damage, but with proper mitigations, it's very negligible. And then we go into Ancient Quagga. There's a little bit more stuff here. It's not too important. And depending on the tank composition, you know, it's not complicated. You just beat up Thordan. You mitigate the Ancient Quagga. And I believe it's one auto. Heavenly Heal. As you saw here, I invuln because I took the first buster. And then Thordan will follow up with 3 busters. So we'll see it from this POV. So here's the auto. Let's just go back a little bit. So here's the raid wide. The gunbreaker right here is going to take an auto, and then Thordan's going to cast Heavenly Heal. Here's the auto. And then Heavenly Heal's incoming. Gunbreaker's invuln, takes the Heavenly Heal, and Thordan follows up with 3 cleaves. Cleave number 1, cleave number 2, cleave number 3. Thordan will recenter very shortly. And then we go into Sanctity Dash, which is going to be a video in the future. But that's always strength of the ward. It's not a complicated mechanic, or it's not a complicated sequence, I should say. But there is a lot of information to parse out, and there's a lot of information that you need to quickly filter and identify as not important. So what I'm gonna do here, and I'm gonna wrap up the video very soon. So I'm gonna play this at full speed, no interruptions to the VOD, and I'm just gonna narrate over the sequence. So right off the bat, you know, we're doing the countdown. The tank is gonna establish threat on Thordan. For hunky dory. Gonna be 2 autos. We're gonna do our Protean bait. Wait for that cast bar to finish, move. And then it's gonna be 3 autos right here that hit pretty hard. Thordan's gonna recenter. Start positioning to read the map in preparation for strength of the ward. So I'm just pre-positioning just so I have a very good vantage point of the Dragoon when they spawn. Red. Move into position. Remember, I'm G1, therefore I'm number. Okay, cool. Single file. Wait for that cast bar to finish. Dodge. Positions, defamations, party stack, asshole machinist, get into position, take towers. Ancient Quagga incoming, make sure there are tools, make sure people are healthy. Gunbreaker is in position in front of Thordan, very, very important. Just so that you're not flipping Thordan all over the place and cleaving the party and killing them. Invuln for Heavenly Heal. And then Buster 1, 2, 3. Thordan recenters. And then we go into Sanctity. Once again, from the wide shot of the POV, I'm going to let this play out in full speed. I'll narrate it once more, a little more briefly. So, we're starting the fight. Auto 1, Auto 2, Ascalon's Mercy Concealed, wait for the end of cast bar, move, cool. Auto 1, Auto 2, Auto 3, start pre-positioning so you can read the map and determine the safe spot. If you're a tank, if you're a melee, just keep hitting him. And then once he jumps away, start getting your bearings, start orienting yourself. It's red. Get in position. Cool. Single file. End of cast bar. We dodge. Dodge. Orient your camera so that you know where Thordan is. And then Defamations figure out the positioning. Tanks are in position. Party stack in position. Take towers. Thordan's back. Ancient Quagga. Mitt. Heal. Gunbreaker's in position in front of Thordan. Takes an auto, followed by Heavenly Heal. Invuln. Invuln's up. Heavenly Heal. Buster 1, 2, 3. Recenters. Sanctity. That's all there is to it.